On the morning of November 30th, 2021, a teacher at Oxford High School in Michigan picked up a math worksheet and went still. In the margin, a student had drawn a handgun. Next to it, in a teenager's handwriting, were the words, "The thoughts won't stop, help me." Below that, a drawing of a person bleeding from 2 bullet wounds, and beneath the figure, a laughing emoji. The school did the thing it was supposed to do. It called the boys' parents in. It showed them the drawing. It told them their son needed help that day. By 10:54 a.m., his mother and father had left the building. They did not take him with them. Just under 2 hours later, that same 15-year-old walked out of a bathroom with a 9mm handgun and started shooting. 4 students died. Tate Myre, 16, Hana St. Juliana, 14, Madisyn Baldwin, 17, Justin Shilling, 17. 7 other people were wounded. The shooter, James Crumbley, would later plead guilty and be sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. That part of the story followed a path America has walked far too many times before. But this case did not end with the person who pulled the trigger. According to the Oakland County Prosecutor's Office, the failures that made that day possible did not start in the hallway. They started in the home. And so prosecutors made a decision that had never succeeded in an American courtroom before. They charged the shooter's mother and father with manslaughter, not for firing a single shot, but for everything they did and did not do in the days and hours leading up to it. This is the story of how Jennifer and James Crumbley became the first parents in the United States convicted of involuntary manslaughter for a mass shooting carried out by their child. It is a story about a gun bought as a gift, a cry for help that went unanswered, and a question that 2 separate juries were asked to decide. When a child does the unthinkable, where does the responsibility end? Before this became a case about parents and prosecutors and legal history, it was a Tuesday at a high school, and 4 of the people who walked in that morning would not walk out. Tate Myre was 16. He played football, wore number 42, and was the kind of student teachers remembered for the right reasons. When the shooting started, Tate was in a hallway. Investigators later said he moved toward the gunman rather than away. He died trying to stop it. His community would go on to honor his number through a foundation built in his name. Hana St. Juliana was 14, the youngest of the 4, a freshman. Her family later described a girl who was just beginning high school, just beginning everything. After her death, a memorial garden was planted in her honor, filled with purple, the color her family said she loved. Madisyn Baldwin was 17, a senior and an artist. She had been accepted to college with a scholarship. She was weeks into her final year of high school. Justin Shilling was 17, a senior and the co-captain of the school bowling team. He juggled multiple jobs alongside his studies, the kind of teenager who held down work and a future at the same time. These were not statistics. They were a football player, a freshman, an artist, and a kid with a part-time job. 4 ordinary lives in an ordinary Michigan town. Everything that follows in this story matters only because they did not get to finish theirs. To understand how that morning was even possible, you have to go back 4 days, to the Friday after Thanksgiving, November 26th, 2021. According to trial testimony, James Crumbley walked into a gun store and bought a 9mm Sig Sauer handgun. His 15-year-old son, Ethan, was with him. Prosecutors said the gun was, in effect, a gift. That same day, Ethan posted a photo of the handgun online and called it, quote, "my new beauty." His mother, Jennifer, would later be described in court as referring to the weapon as his Christmas present. That weekend, the family went to a shooting range together. Then came Monday, and then Tuesday, the 30th. The day did not begin with the shooting. It began with warnings. The day before, a teacher had caught Ethan searching for ammunition on his phone during class. The school contacted his mother. According to prosecutors, Jennifer did not respond with alarm. She texted her son, quote, "LOL, I'm not mad at you. You have to learn not to get caught." It is one of the most chilling details in the entire case because of how ordinary it sounds. A mother told her teenage son was looking up bullets in the middle of a school day, and her instinct was not fear. It was that he should be more careful about getting caught. The next morning, the warning was impossible to misread. A teacher found that worksheet, the gun, the bleeding figure, the words, "the thoughts won't stop, help me," blood everywhere. "My life is useless." The school called Jennifer and James in. They came. They sat in a meeting with a counselor and a dean. They were shown the drawing. They were told their son appeared to be in crisis, and they were asked to take him home and get him help. They said no. According to testimony from school staff, the parents resisted taking him home. They had jobs to get back to. The meeting ended around 10:54 in the morning. Ethan went back to class. What no one in that room knew, because his parents did not say it, was that the gun bought 4 days earlier was, at that moment, inside the boy's backpack. At roughly 12:51 p.m., Ethan Crumbley emerged from a school bathroom and opened fire in the hallway. The shooting lasted only a few minutes. By the time it was over, 4 students were dead and 7 more people were wounded. As the first 911 calls were still going out, Jennifer Crumbley sent her son a text message. It read, "Ethan, don't do it." Minutes later, James called 911 to report that his handgun was missing from the house and that his son might be the shooter at Oxford High. The question that would define everything that came next was no longer what happened. It was who else, beyond the boy himself, could have stopped it, and whether the law could reach them. Ethan Crumbley was arrested the day of the shooting and charged as an adult. In 2022, he pleaded guilty. In December 2023, he was sentenced to life in prison without parole. For most cases, that would have been the end. But the Oakland County prosecutor, Karen McDonald, had already made a far more unusual decision. 4 days after the shooting, she announced manslaughter charges against both parents. The legal theory was that Jennifer and James Crumbley had been so grossly negligent, buying the gun, ignoring the warnings, failing to secure the weapon, failing to tell the school what they knew, that they bore criminal responsibility for the deaths. It was a theory many legal experts doubted could win. Parents had been blamed before. They had almost never been convicted. Then the parents disappeared. When they failed to appear for their arraignment, a manhunt began. According to investigators, the couple had withdrawn $4,000 in cash. They were found and arrested in a warehouse in Detroit. Prosecutors would point to that flight as evidence of guilt. The defense would call it panic. The state made an unusual choice. It tried the 2 parents separately. Jennifer Crumbley went first in early 2024. The evidence against her was built from her own words. The text messages, the trip to the range, the "you have to learn not to get caught." Prosecutors argued she had every chance to act and chose again and again not to. The drawing alone, they said, should have ended that workday. A counselor and a dean had sat across from her and told her, in plain language, that her son had written, "The thoughts won't stop, help me," beside a picture of a gun. She and her husband had been asked to take him home. They had been told to get him into treatment within 48 hours, and they had walked out and gone back to work. Then, in a decision that stunned legal observers, Jennifer took the stand in her own defense. Under questioning, she was asked whether she would have done anything differently. She testified that she would not. It was a moment the prosecution could not have scripted better. The mother of a school shooter telling a jury that, given the same warnings again, she would make the same choices. On February 6, 2024, the jury convicted Jennifer Crumbley on 4 counts of involuntary manslaughter, 1 for each student killed. It was the first conviction of its kind in the United States. 5 weeks later, James Crumbley faced his own jury. His trial centered on the gun itself. A store employee testified about the purchase. Investigators testified that the cable lock that had come packaged with the handgun was found still sealed, never used. The weapon, prosecutors said, had not been locked away from a teenager his parents already had reason to worry about. It had been left where he could take it. On March 14, 2024, James was convicted on the same 4 counts. 2 parents, 2 juries, the same answer. For the first time, an American court had said that the responsibility for a school shooting did not stop with the child who fired the gun. On April 9, 2024, Jennifer and James Crumbley were sentenced together. Judge Cheryl Matthews handed each of them 10 to 15 years in prison, the maximum the law allowed. They would be eligible for parole only after serving 10. At the sentencing, the families of the 4 students spoke. They described birthdays that would not come, college years that would not happen, the specific and permanent shape of an absence. One of the teachers who had been shot that day stood and spoke as well, survivor to the people whose inaction, the jury had found, helped put her in that hallway. The defense had argued, throughout both trials, that no parent can truly predict when a child will turn to violence, that hindsight makes every missed sign look obvious, and that grief was being mistaken for guilt. It is an argument worth taking seriously, because most parents who miss a warning sign are never standing in a courtroom. What set this case apart, in the jury's view, was not a single missed signal. It was the gun the parents bought, the lock they left sealed, the warnings they were handed in person, and the silence they kept when it mattered most. The Crumbleys' convictions did not bring anyone back. What they did was draw a line that had never been drawn before. Prosecutors across the country took note. The case is now cited whenever the question arises. If a parent buys the weapon, ignores the warnings, and stays silent, can the law hold them responsible for what their child does with it? In Oakland County, Michigan, the answer became yes. But verdicts are not the part that lasts. What lasts is a 14-year-old who loved the color purple, a football player who ran toward the danger, an artist with a scholarship she would never use, a 17-year-old who co-captained a bowling team and worked to build a life. 4 students went to school in Oxford, Michigan, on an ordinary Tuesday morning. The warnings were there. They were written, in a child's handwriting, on a math worksheet. Everyone who needed to see them saw them. And 4 families have spent every day since living inside the answer to a question no parent should ever have to face. The thoughts won't stop. Help me. Someone wrote those words that morning, and no one took them home.